a repeat. Here we go again, some of the same rap. You know, theologists. Theologists? Yes. People who study religion, who study the Bhagavad-gita, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, the Four Noble Truths. They follow all the religious teachings of all the great prophets. And they narrow it down to their own understanding. And then they share it again. And people do this often so that they can remember to remember. And you can study all the great religions and all the great prophets and all their commandments and support systems and recommendations. And it can be thousands of pages. But in the end, they lead to the same God. The one God, under any circumstance, is one God. And the one set of rules, someone said that God was the rule book. That God, for them, was the book. What does that mean? Well, God's consciousness comes, or God is realized through the book. Right? But we don't always see eye to eye with the book. We want to find ways out of the commitments. We have no choice. We may change. It's like walking between two walls and they have nails. And if you walk straight, you don't get scratched. The karmic result of your straight walking is no struggle and no suffering. But, you know, when we don't feel comfortable following God's rules, we break the law. And we don't necessarily feel the needles right away. We don't have to reap where we sow. But in the long run, good karmic work, the meditation, the looking inside for God's instruction, the listening intently to what God is telling us, and doing as told will work out for us. But of course we forget and we don't remember to remember what's in Scripture. All the word God should do is straighten you up. Somebody said God, oh shit. Just by hearing the word God is the word, and the word is the way out of suffering. And so the Quran, the Torah, the Bible, the Yoga Sutras, the Bhagavad-gita, the many scriptures that are handed down by God through his worthy prophets are one and the same. There is nothing that exists in the Bible in terms of instruction on how best to treat your fellow man or how best to treat ourselves than is what is in the Yoga Sutras. There's nothing in the Yoga Sutras that does not appear in the Bible or the Quran or the Torah. And so the one God by any name is one. And the prophets dissolve into one great voice. They are his worthy servants, and we are in turn his worthy servants when we know the truth. So chasing the self, self-realization should be our life's goal. To know the self is to know God. When we know that self, we know that God is in all things and all beings. But we know that we have direction out of suffering, so we can then operate from ease and do God's work without the distractions that drag us here and there and outside of the narrow focus that is promoted to us. So, my religion is love, someone says. Yeah, my religion is love. God bless you. If we can operate from that calm space of needing nothing and giving everything to the greater good. In the Yoga Sutras we have swareya, all your efforts to the greater God. Oh, swadi is study of self. Iswara pranidhani, all your efforts to the greater good. If we can remember that our efforts are for the greater good, for the collective, and we can always make choices with that in mind, we'll be a much happier people. I want to talk about the 8 limbs and the science of God's consciousness at some other time, but it makes me think that there's a rule book. I'll tell you briefly. The yamas, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, non-lying, no, non-harming, ahimsa, non-lying, non-stealing, control of energy, and giving all your efforts to the greater good. These are the 5 yamas, the 5 niyamas: cleanliness, contentment, santosha, satya, contentment, iswada pranida, giving all the efforts to the greater good. Hard work, dedication, and focus, giving all your efforts to the greater good. And the 5th niyama, all your efforts to the greater good, swareya. It's a science book. The Yoga Sutras is a science book. The 3rd one is the asana, to move the body and promote circulation. The 4th one is to practice removal and moving of the energy in the body. So there are 8 limbs in the scientific study that are given to the higher self, that gives way to the higher self. It's science. It's science. So the point I make is there are 8 limbs in the yogic scripture. 8 limbs. And the book itself is a science book. There's non-religious. There's no reference to the deities or to any specific god. But it is the science book for happiness, the Yoga Sutras. And for all of us who are interested in just a simple, without any dogma or separation, I think that the separation didn't come from the prophets. It came from the teachers' followers. There were no Christians when Jesus Christ died. There were no Muslims when Muhammad passed. There were no Buddhists when Lord Buddha passed. These were all men who came to redirect us when we had maybe taken the words and misunderstood them, or maybe we had gone on a bad path. And so there comes a prophet who would repeat to us the direction towards God. None of them preached separation. In fact, they preached the same as the yogic scripture and as the Bhagavad-gita, and as each prophet says in their scriptures, it's clear, they preach inclusion, inclusivity, and they preached loving each person without regard for religion, race, or anything except character. And even then, they taught to love everyone, and maybe if they don't live up to your character, what you asked for, then you still love them from afar. So practice love, and this will give you, I think, a freedom and a happiness that you want, and everything else is separate from that, takes you off the path. Anyway.